You know, for something we literally depend on to live, water is seriously strange.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, right?
I mean, I was reading through all the stuff you sent about it, and it was like
Right.
mind-blowing. Way more than just like, stay hydrated, important.
It's easy to take it for granted.
Totally. So where do we even start with this?
Well, we've got this whole collection of articles,
All
right?
right, right.
They cover a bunch of different aspects.
Okay.
But I think the common thread is how weird water actually is.
Okay, yeah, let's dive into that. Like this whole Mpemba effect thing.
Okay.
Sounds like it's going to make my brain melt, honestly.
Good one. It's a good one.
So for those of us who haven't like spent the last decade researching this,
Yeah, yeah.
what is this thing? It's something about hot water freezing faster.
That's the gist, yeah.
Makes zero sense.
So you've got this Tanzanian student, Erasto Mpemba, back in the 60s.
Okay.
He's making ice cream. Notices this weird thing.
Hold on, he's making ice cream. That's how we stumbled onto this.
That's the story. Apparently, he noticed that his hot ice cream mix was freezing faster than the cold stuff.
No way.
And get this, he wasn't even the first to observe this. Aristotle, way back when, he even wrote about it.
Seriously, so people have known about this for centuries and still don't really understand it?
That's the thing about science, right? Always more to learn.
Okay, so walk me through this. Like, how could HOT water freeze faster?
So there's no definitive answer yet.
Come on, science.
But the most popular theory has to do with evaporation.
Okay.
Hot water, it evaporates faster.
Right.
That means there's less of it to actually freeze.
So smaller volume, less time to cool down, even if it starts hotter.
Exactly.
I guess that makes sense.
But even then, trying to prove this in the lab is tricky. Lots of factors can mess with the results.
What kind of factors?
Well, you've got the shape of the container, right? Air currents around it, even how pure the water is can all make a difference.
So it's not like a guaranteed thing, this Mpemba effect.
Not exactly. It's more nuanced.
Water's got to be complicated, right?
Seems like it. But that's what makes it so interesting, right? This one substance, so essential, yet still throwing these mysteries at us.
It's like it's keeping us on our toes. Okay, so we've got this whole hot ice thing, but then it also gets weirder, right? Because water is sticky.
Well, sticky might not be the perfect word.
But I read that.
Think of it more like it's clingy.
Clingy water.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
This all comes down to something called surface tension.
Oh, like bugs walking on water. I used to be amazed by that as a kid.
Exactly. That's surface tension in action. It's like the surface of the water forms this invisible film, and that's because the water molecules are attracted to each other. They want to stick together,
So it's not magic, it's just water being water.
basically. And that same clinginess, it's essential for us, too. It's how blood moves through our capillaries, even against gravity.
Wait, really?
Yeah, those tiny water molecules clinging together, they help keep our blood flowing.
That's incredible.
And speaking of clinging, that's
Yeah.
also what makes water such a good solvent.
Solvent, you mean like dissolving stuff.
Exactly.
But wait, one of these articles mentions something about how water dissolves some things but not others.
You're thinking about how it dissolves salt and sugars,
Right.
but not oils and fats.
Right, right. Why is that?
It's all about the structure of a water molecule. They're polar, which means they have a positive end and a negative end.
Kind of like a tiny magnet.
Perfect analogy. So the water molecules are attracted to other polar molecules, like those in salt or sugar.
Right.
They basically surround those molecules and pull them apart, and that's what dissolving is.
So water's like a tiny little disassembler.
In a way.
Right.
But when it comes to oils and fats, they're nonpolar, so they don't have those same charges.
So no magnetic attraction, no pulling apart, no dissolving.
Exactly.
So that's why my salad dressing separates. But is that the only reason this solvent thing matters?
Not at all. Think about it. Our cells, they're filled with a water-based solution. Nutrients, everything our bodies need, it has to be dissolved in water to move around.
So it's like a watery highway inside us.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's the same on a larger scale, from our bodies to the entire planet. This ability of water to dissolve things is key.
Wild. Okay, so we need it to live. It acts all weird. But on top of all that, we're also like really bad at knowing how much to actually drink, right?
That's what I've heard, yeah.
I mean, one of these articles said most people only need about 2.5 quarts a day. I swear I thought it was way more.
It's a common misconception.
But it makes sense when you think about how much of us is already water.
Exactly. Did you know that about 70% of the human body is made up of water?
70%. I mean, we're practically walking water bottles.
Essentially. And for a 70-kilogram person, that translates to roughly 42 liters of water.
42 liters. That's more than a bathtub full.
It's a testament to just how vital water is to our existence.
I feel like I need a glass of water after hearing all that.
Me too, honestly.
But that also makes it even crazier to think about how little water is actually drinkable. I mean, we're the blue planet, right? You'd think we'd be swimming in fresh water.
It's not quite that simple, unfortunately. Several sources we have mention that only about 1% of Earth's water is actually drinkable.
1%. That's it.
The rest is salt water, or locked up in glaciers and ice caps.
So we're basically living on a giant, mostly undrinkable water balloon.
Basically, yeah. And even that tiny fraction of drinkable water we do have, it's under threat. Pollution, overuse, climate change, they're all putting a strain on our water resources.
It's kind of terrifying when you put it like that.
It is a serious issue. And it makes you think about places like Finland, which apparently, according to Discover La Fontana, has some of the purest water in the world.
Finland, really. I need to add that to my travel list. Imagine turning on the tap and having perfectly clean, safe water.
It does make you realize what's possible.
Right. If they can do it, maybe there's hope for the rest of us.
And it's not just about having crystal clear tap water. It's about protecting the entire ecosystem.
That too, of course. Speaking of ecosystems, oceans. We have to talk about oceans.
Ready to go a little deeper?
Dive right in. Dive right in.
So oceans, right? Huge, mysterious.
Understatement of the century.
But it's easy to think of them as just this big uniform thing.
Just a whole lot of water.
Exactly. But what's fascinating is how much variation there is within that water.
Okay, how so?
Temperature plays a huge role, way more than most people realize.
Right, different parts of the ocean have different temperatures, obviously.
Right, but it's more than just this part's warm, that part's cold.
Okay.
It's about density. Cold water, it's actually denser than warm water. It sinks. Just like how cold air settles near the floor in winter, cold water does the same in the ocean.
Makes sense. Kind of like how those layers form in lakes sometimes.
Exactly. And the sinking cold water, it's a driving force behind ocean currents.
Oh, yeah.
They're not just random flows, you know.
So how does cold water sinking make currents happen?
Well, the Science Learning Hub article, it had a good explanation of this. Basically, it creates this giant conveyor belt.
A conveyor belt.
In the ocean. It's a system of currents that circulates water all around the planet, and it's all powered by these temperature differences.
So like cold water sinks, warm water rises, and that somehow creates a flow that goes all over.
That's a simplified version, but essentially, yeah.
My mind is officially blown.
It's pretty wild.
Ah.
And it has a huge impact on everything.
Like what?
Well, remember how we were talking about water being good at absorbing heat?
Yeah, the whole heat capacity thing.
Exactly. So the ocean acts like a giant heat sink for the planet, absorbing and distributing heat from the sun.
Okay.
And those currents we were talking about, they help move that heat around from the tropics toward the poles, keeping things balanced.
So we don't all fry or freeze because the ocean is playing climate control? Wow. Okay, so cold water sinking, creating this worldwide current system that regulates the planet's temperature.
See, water is way more interesting than people think.
No kidding. And it gets even weirder because I read that sound travels differently in water, too.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one. It travels faster in water than in air.
Faster? By how much?
About 4 times faster, according to Discover La Fontana.
4 times? That's insane. So, like, whale songs are probably traveling crazy distances.
Most likely. And think about it, how we perceive sound in air versus how marine animals must perceive it.
It's got to be a totally different experience for them, right? Their whole sonic world is sped up.
Exactly. It's a good reminder of how much we still don't know about the ocean depths and the life down there.
And speaking of things we don't know about the ocean, how about this memory thing?
You're going with that one.
I have to. It sounds crazy.
It does sound a bit out there, I'll give you that.
So what's the deal? Does the ocean actually remember stuff?
Okay, so remember is maybe a bit misleading. It's more like a delayed reaction.
Okay.
You remember how water has a high heat capacity?
Yeah, it holds on to heat really well.
Right. So the ocean absorbs a ton of heat from the atmosphere, way more than the air itself, without its temperature changing a whole lot.
Like a buffer.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
Now here's the memory part. That heat, it doesn't just disappear instantly when things cool down.
So it's like the ocean is holding on to the memory of past heat.
Kind of. It takes a really long time for that absorbed heat to dissipate. It's a slow release.
So even if, say, we stopped polluting and warming the planet today, the ocean would still be releasing heat from, like, decades ago.
It's possible. And that's where it gets a bit unsettling.
Yeah, that's not a happy thought.
Because we know ocean temperatures are rising. That's climate change in action, right?
Right, that's like a global warming 101 fact.
Exactly. And this memory effect means those rising temperatures, they're going to have long-lasting consequences even if we get our act together.
Because that heat the ocean absorbed, it's going to keep coming back to haunt us, basically.
It's not that simple, but that's the general idea.
Okay, well, that's not terrifying at all.
And remember that article from Environmental Measurement Systems? The one about how even a tiny increase in average global temperature can have huge effects.
Yeah, the whole zero point 0.1 degrees Celsius can mess things up thing.
That one. It's not just about the air temperature. The ocean plays a huge role. And this memory effect just amplifies everything.
So, small changes over time, big, long-lasting consequences.
That's the gist, yeah.
I'm starting to think water is less about simple hydration and more like the secret puppet master of our planet.
Maybe a little bit.
It's kind of terrifying, but also amazing, this whole ocean memory thing.
It really makes you realize how little we still understand about our own planet.
And water, I mean, we started this whole thing thinking, okay, water, it's important. But now I'm like, water is running the show.
In a lot of ways it is. It's the unsung hero, the behind-the-scenes orchestrator of so much that we depend on.
I'll never look at a glass of water the same way again, that's for sure.
And that's a good thing. The more we appreciate water, the more likely we are to protect it, right?
Absolutely. So what can our listeners do? I mean, besides stock up on bottled water and hope for the best.
Well, for starters, don't underestimate the power of knowledge.
Okay.
We've only scratched the surface here, We've got links to all these articles in the show notes. Go check them out.
There's always more to learn.
Always. And for those who want to get their hands dirty, literally, remember that Safe Drinking Water Foundation we mentioned?
Oh, yeah, the water testing kit.
Exactly. They make it easy to see what's actually in your water.
Get those science fair flashbacks, but in a good way.
Exactly. Because it's one thing to talk about water quality in the abstract.
Right, but then you test your own tap water, and it's like, whoa, this is real.
Exactly. Suddenly, those global issues become a lot more personal.
Okay, that's actually a really good point. So we've learned a ton, had our minds blown a few times.
Par for the course when we're talking about water.
Clearly. But before we run out of time, any last words of wisdom from the water expert?
Wisdom? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But I will say, even if you forget all the sciencey details, just remember, water is weird, it's wonderful, and it's worth protecting.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So next time you're sipping on some H2O, take a moment to appreciate the sheer weedness of it all.
Cheers to that.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.